Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Sands. Welcome to the Food Origins Podcast. I'll be talking to people about their unique stories with food. And as a quick reminder, the restaurants and gear talked about on each episode can be found on my website, foodoriginspodcast.com. I appreciate your support. And thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Food Origins Podcast. Today, my guest is Joey Camacho. He's the owner and managing partner of Konjoe Burger Bar. He was born in Saipan and raised on Guam with a diverse Japanese, Chamorro, and multi-ethnic background. Konjoe currently has 4 locations in the city of Los Altos at State Street Market, Santa Clara at Levi Stadium, SAP Center, and another cloud kitchen in San Jose, California. Joey brings his vast knowledge from working in finance to culinary school and cooking in kitchens in Hawaii, Guam, and California. I've been looking forward to sitting down with him, and I've always wanted to talk to Joey ever since I've had his great food at the former location where it all started at San Pedro Square Market in San Jose. We go over the history of Konjoe, growing up in a melting pot of cultures, trying new food, all things Japan, and of course his latest offerings, advice, and recommendations. Appreciate you guys for listening. Enjoy this episode. And if you also see, I don't have any current sponsors, but if you take a look at the Support the Show link, you can donate there, and appreciate your support. All right, we're live. Recording on location at Konjoe Burger Bar in Santa Clara, California, and I'm with Joey Camacho. Thanks, Joey, for being on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And let's just, don't mind the background noise. We're on location in the restaurant, so they're prepping for the day. And Joey, why don't you get into it? Why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from. I kind of know, but tell the listeners where you're from, where you grew up, and all that good stuff.
Sure. So my name is Joey Camacho. I'm from the island of Guam. I was actually born in Saipan. I know you did an episode with a couple of guys from Saipan recently.
Yeah. Jose and TJ.
Yeah, I actually know Jose. And
yeah.
That's how we
got connected, for sure.
Connected.
Yep.
But yeah, I was born in Saipan, lived there for 5 years, and then I relocated to Guam. My dad's side of the family is from Guam, so we moved right across the street from my grandparents. My mom is actually from Japan, so growing up we had a very diverse array of cuisines that we would eat, right? And Guam itself is a melting pot too. I mean, you have Filipino there, you have Japanese, Korean, Chinese, people from all different backgrounds, and so growing up I was able to just have the ability to try all these different cuisines, and I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of built the foundation for what I'm doing today with regard to Konjoe Burger.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you're Japanese. My mom's Japanese as well.
Okay.
And are you so? What is your ethnic background? What's your background?
So my mom is actually Japanese Korean.
Okay.
And my dad is Chamorro, Italian, Spanish, Lithuanian, Filipino. It's kind of hard to tell because there were all these different countries that came and took over Guam and claimed it as its territory. So,
okay. You ever done like the DNA thing? Or
no, we haven't. But my grandfather told me that our relatives came from the island of Cebu in the Philippines.
Okay.
But they were Spanish sailors, I guess.
Right.
And so, when Magellan found Guam, the Spanish came and they took over. And so there's a lot of like Hispanic or I guess Spanish influence in the cuisine and even in the language itself.
Yeah, for sure. And, a lot of people don't know, if you don't know, Guam is a U.S. territory in the Mariana Islands. And why don't you tell us what's it like growing up on Guam? How long did you live there? And
sure.
Obviously, you want to know what you ate when you were a kid.
Yeah, so, I grew up in Guam. my grandparents actually lived on the beach, and we lived right across the street from them. So I grew up, living on the beach. We had family barbecues every weekend, and that kind of just inspired me to get into cooking. I would see my dad and my grandpa just grilling out on the back, and I don't know, I was just always really fascinated by it, and I always wanted to do it myself. And I don't think they allowed me to actually cook until I was maybe 12 or 13, because it was charcoal and
open fire
and stuff. But yeah, when I finally started doing it, it was like that was like my weekly thing that I looked forward to every week was just to barbecue for the family.
Yeah. And being on the island, was it more, did you have more seafood or did you have more meat? Like, what were you guys eating?
Our household was a lot of meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we would just do steaks, ribs, pork chops. Chicken was a big one. Usually chicken thighs or drumsticks. But yeah, I mean, my grandpa, he just loved having the whole spread. So we would do that. Anytime like one of our friends would go out fishing and catch something, like they would give it to us and we would have that as part of our Sunday meal. But it wasn't as frequent as having, just different meats on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when it was fish, it was prepared raw, or we would deep fry it or steam it. So it wasn't something that we threw on the grill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right on. And then Jose wanted me to ask you this. So, Jose, there's your question. What is your top favorite Chamorro dish?
Honestly, I really, really like just barbecued ribs. Like, when I go places, I think that's the first thing that I try, because I think it can either be done really well or done really poorly.
And you're talking pork ribs, beef ribs, short ribs?
Usually pork spare ribs.
Pork spare ribs,
yeah.
Okay.
So everyone has like their own recipe to marinate it and their own like methodology to cook it.
Yeah.
I actually served them here during the pandemic, just as kind of like, I don't know. I was feeling like we should just try something one day.
Else, yeah.
So we tried it out, and it was really well received. But yeah, I don't know. That's like my go-to Chamorro dish is barbecue ribs.
It's hard to go wrong with ribs. I mean,
yeah.
And I've had Jose's. Jose has his recipe, and they're good, man. We throw them on the grill, and and everyone has their different styles. And I've had tons of different barbecue, of course. And there's just if you like pork ribs or you like beef ribs, if you don't eat pork or whatever, but there's just roasted, grilled, braised, smoked. I mean,
yeah,
it comes out super good all the time.
So like in Guam, we typically will grill it over an open fire, right? But I've been kind of tinkering with recipes where, maybe we add a little bit of smoke to it and try like cooking it like that for a little bit and then finishing it off on the grill and stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know. Still trying to dial in a recipe that I like, that kind of
satisfies.
Yeah, satisfies that, but also like takes into consideration just all the things that I've learned in my culinary background.
Kind of where you're from and stuff. Yeah, we'll get into your culinary background. Did you have any influences when you were younger? I know obviously with the cooking, open fire when you were a kid, but was there any person or thing that happened where you're like, oh, I think this is what I want to get into? Yeah,
so my mom being from Japan, we would actually go to Japan maybe like 2 or 3 times a year just to visit her family. And I mean, Guam's a 3.5-hour flight from Japan, so it's not like trying to go to Japan from out here. But yeah, when we would go, her uncle actually owned a restaurant. It was a yakiniku type of place. So for those of you that don't know what yakiniku is, it's like Japanese like tableside barbecue. And so I would go there and he would be doing things like preparing beef tongue and short ribs and just having all the different sides and stuff. I was always really fascinated with it, and we would frequent his restaurant when we were younger. I think it was like one of the things that we would do every time that we traveled to Japan. And so I don't know, I remember this one day we were there and he was cutting up a beef tongue, and I was just like, this is so cool. And it kind of just, I don't know, in the back of my mind, I was like, I want to be able to do something like this one day, like, have a restaurant and I don't know, pursue something in the culinary industry. And I must have been, I don't know, 8 or 9 at that time. So I wasn't that old, but I kind of just
And
knew
beef
at that
tongue,
point
I
in
mean,
time.
some people I've talked to get exposed to it, like hunters get exposed to beef tongue or deer, but that's something kind of an odd item that's not always come up, so to have that experience that early
Yeah.
and then kind of influence that. I mean, Japan in general, I've been there when I was younger, when I was 13. I haven't been back. I need to go back, but like just Japan in general has I mean, you could tell us, tell us what your experiences were like in Japan. Like the food there is amazing.
Yeah, the food is definitely amazing. I think a lot of people are dedicated to their craft, right? And you see a lot of restaurants where people have been doing this their entire life, and the restaurant may have actually been passed down, from father to son or whatever, and it's just been in the family for generations. And so, I think the food quality there is just it's really superb, and I think it's really the dedication that a lot of the people just put into their craft there. But I've eaten a lot of interesting things in Japan. I mean, I've had chicken sashimi.
Yeah, that's definitely something that you don't see.
Yeah, I've had whale sashimi before over there. I know that's controversial, but I've had that as well. I've had horse over there. Just a lot of different things.
Did you have blowfish?
I have had blowfish, not raw though. We had it fried.
Okay.
And it was funny too. I remember eating it, and I just like, I had this moment where I was like, okay, if I don't collapse in the next 5 seconds, then I'm okay,
Yeah, it's like skydiving, right?
If
the chute works, all right, I'll be okay.
Well, I think what was interesting though is, I don't know, I distinctly remember just having like this tingling sensation in my mouth, and I'm like, oh man, what's going on? Like, is this my mind playing tricks on me, or is this the actual dish? So I've had that before. Frog, I've had frog out there. But I don't know, growing up, like I played on Guam's national golf team as a junior golfer, and so we would travel out to the States every summer. I would go to like California, Hawaii, Alabama, Florida. And so like even traveling to like Alabama and Florida, I was exposed to Southern cuisine. And like my favorite thing to eat when I travel was alligator, deep fried alligator tail.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so were you planning on playing golf? Did you want to go pro, or?
I think that's what my dad wanted.
Okay.
I mean, he spent a lot of money just, on me and my brother. Like we would play golf multiple times a week. We would go to the driving range. We had lessons, and I don't know. It's something that I kind of wish I'd further pursued, but I don't know. When I went to college, things kind of didn't work out on the golf team, so I decided not to continue with it. I still do play to this day, but I mean, I think the last time I played was in November, and the time before that was like June. So I get out
once in a while.
Yeah, a couple times a year.
Yeah. Okay. And then when did you move to California?
I moved out here when I was 18.
Okay.
For college.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've been here ever since?
I've been here ever since. Yeah.
Okay. And then you went to Santa Clara University, right?
Yes.
So what did you study there?
I studied marketing. So I got a BS in marketing, and then a minor in Japanese.
Nice.
And then because I wanted to open a restaurant, I went to culinary school right after at the Professional Culinary Institute at the time, which later turned into the International Culinary Center in Campbell.
Okay.
And then I think they've closed since then. But so I went there. I graduated in 2008 when, the last recession happened. Looks like we're going into another one right now. But I couldn't find a job for my life. Like, I put out resumes, and people were like, yeah, we can bring you on the team, but it would kind of be like staging, like you're not going to get paid for it. And I don't know. I was not prepared to do that because there was no certainty around the timeline of how long that would happen. Right.
Right.
And so I kind of explored other options, and I ended up going back to school and getting my master's in business administration.
Okay.
And I also kind of focused on accounting and finance at that time.
And then, so did you at what point did you get a food job? I know you were kind of working all over the place, right?
Yeah. So I've been kind of in and out of it since my college days. I would say my first like real food job was I did an internship in Kauai for about 2.5 or 3 months at the Sheraton Kauai Resort when I was in college.
Nice.
Basically lived on the property and just worked in the kitchen for
Sweet.
free. But yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, the chef over there, he really wanted me to just absorb as much as I could. So he put me on a rotation. I worked in different kitchens every day. And
Shout out to him for doing that, because that helps a lot.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Rather than just sticking you in a corner and say, hey, work here and see you later.
Yeah, and he really took me under his wing. I mean, he did things like, we would go, on his days off, he took me fishing. Like, we went trout fishing one day, and he was like, you're going to clean and fillet all these fish because I want you to learn how to fillet a fish. And
yeah.
So, he tried to, I guess, curate an experience for my learning. And yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, I got to work in the sushi bar, Italian restaurant, their American restaurant. I got to work at the grill over by the poolside. I was working in the bakery, helped them out with catering. So yeah, it was just, I got the full experience at the hotel.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then at what point did you get to end up kind of steady working in California?
So I didn't actually work in the food industry for an extended period of time here in California.
Okay.
When I was in culinary school, I had a job at the Four Seasons as well in Palo Alto, so I was working there. I did a brief stint at the St. Regis in San Francisco. And then I also was a personal chef for a little bit for a professor at Stanford. And so that was kind of like my background, but I don't know. I always just had this this desire to open a place, and all of those things happened before I went back to school to get my master's. And then when I got my master's, I needed a paying job, and so I ended up applying to some accounting firms, and I worked for EY for 2 years as a auditor. And I think when things started to turn around from the recession, I was like, okay, now's a good time to leave. I have a decent amount of experience, at least on the business end. I got to see a lot of corporate P&Ls and just read like
Profit and loss for those people.
Yeah, profit and loss for those people. Yeah, I got very proficient in accounting and even just like contract review, because you do a lot of reading as an auditor.
Nice. Yeah, just seeing the business side of things. So.
Yeah, and so I decided to leave, and I was like, I'm going to open up a restaurant. I didn't know what kind of restaurant at that time, but I was just like, I'm going to open a restaurant, and I noticed San Pedro Square Market in downtown San Jose was just bustling, and they were looking for tenants. So I approached them and said, hey, I'm interested. I approached them with a different concept, though. Like, I always wanted to open something similar to like a small kiosk in Japan. So I was thinking like,
right.
I don't know, more like tapas style food.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like, no, what we really need is a burger place. And I was like, you guys want a burger place? I'll do burgers.
They really
right?
kind of gave you the concept a little?
Yeah. I mean, they said this is what we're looking for.
Interesting. Okay.
They already had a tapas place at the time. And so, there was like a conflict of interest there. They didn't want two tenants serving small plates, basically.
Yeah.
And so when they, when we were having our discussions, they came up to me and they're like, yeah, I think, a burger place is something that we're really lacking here and that we would need. And so kind of going back to what we were talking about with regard to Japanese culture and the individuals that are, kind of dedicated to their craft, I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to take those principles and apply it to a burger joint.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do burgers like on my own accord and not really what people traditionally think of when they think of burgers, right?
Yeah, you have your own twist to it. So why don't you kind of give us the history of Konjoe Burger? I know you opened in 2013, right?
Yeah, we opened in 2013 in San Pedro Square Market. I spent like a year working on the menu, and it was like 5 items.
Yeah.
But I was like, I need to get this right.
Right.
I remember like I would just bake bread at home,
Okay.
burger buns, and I was like, I need to perfect like a bun recipe, figure out what do I want in the burger bun, so that I can go to a bakery and say, this is what I'm looking for. I mean, at that time, I didn't realize that a lot of bakeries would actually turn you down and be like, no, we're not doing that. Like, we have our set process. Like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is what you can buy from us. But, yeah, so I worked on that. I did a lot of research around just sourcing beef, and I tried to find like the best beef that we could find. And, produce, I talked to a bunch of people about produce companies, and I really just wanted to focus on quality more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so, I spent a year working on 5 burgers, I think. And I guess when we opened up, like it was an instant success. And I think a lot of the work that I put into the original menu kind of showed, because we had people coming back after getting their first burger, and they're like, "Oh my God, that was amazing!" Like, I'm definitely coming back. Yeah,
100%. I have been there many times at San Pedro Square. A lot of times with Jose or whoever, and a lot of times we would go before the fights down at the SAP Center.
Yeah.
And I know you don't have it on the menu now, but the Kalbi burger, was that was probably my favorite one.
Yeah.
And then you were doing fried chicken as well. So I was either getting one of those 2 items for sure.
Yeah, for sure. The fried chicken just kind of came about like let's just throw fried chicken on the menu because no one's really doing it in the market.
Yeah.
But yeah, the menu's like evolved over time. Like you said, the Kalbi burger is no longer on the menu. I think a lot of that is because during the pandemic, I actually swapped out one of our griddles for a grill. Okay. And when we were using that grill for the Kalbi, like I noticed the flavor was just so much better than trying to do it, on a griddle. And we ended up getting rid of the grill and replacing it with a griddle because it just worked out better for us operationally. And when we did that, I was like, there's no way we can replicate that flavor. So let's just take it off the menu for now, and then maybe in the future, if we want to bring it back, we can.
Yeah, and then the griddle is more efficient, right, space-wise and everything.
Yeah, and we don't do like an open like charbroiled type burger. We use a griddle because we want to get a good sear on the meat. Yeah. And it's just I don't know, like if you're not a good grill cook and that thing catches on fire, I'm not a big fan of that flavor of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like it's a piece of food that's just caught on fire, Yeah,
it's charred grease.
Yeah,
I know what you're getting at, where they just kind of leave it and it's just flaming and.
Yeah, and I've had that experience multiple times, and it's not a pleasant eating experience. So
no.
And everyone seems to like a good sear on a burger, and it's a lot easier for us to regulate like the temperatures of the burgers too, if it's on a griddle versus an open fire grill.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And let's get into the current menu now. So like I looked at what you have, and it's still a vast menu. You've got a lot more than 5 items on the menu. You've got everything from, the Konjoe, the basics, shiitake, French chef has brie in it, smokehouse. What's in the smokehouse?
We do a barbecue sauce, pickled onions, candied jalapenos, fried egg, cheese, and beef.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking like, I don't know, barbecue, like what would you typically get as condiments, right? Oh, and pickles. Sorry, I missed that too. But just typical condiments, that you would have on a I guess on a barbecue tray, and we wanted to put that on a burger. But yeah, that's a recent addition. So is the French chef with the brie cheese and the bacon onion jam. I don't know, this year we've been a little bit more into experimenting and diving into just trying to create new items.
Some of the other items you've got, chopped cheese, kind of getting into kind of those sandwiches. Tell us about that idea. I know there's concepts out there that have that, and what you decide to put out there. Yeah,
so I actually have a friend, his name is Winston, he's a chef too, and we were kind of talking about, well, what can we do differently on the menu? And he wanted to help us out, so he was like, why don't you do a chopped cheese? No one's doing chopped cheese. And so we came in here, and we R&D'd it back in like I want to say it was April of last year.
Yeah.
But we didn't actually.
Do you want me? I'm gonna ask him to cut the music.
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
all right.
Yeah. So we are indeeded, and we basically decided that it would be a good thing to put on the menu. We didn't release it though until Outside Lands, which I believe was in August. That was the first time that we released it, and we actually had it at our stadium locations for a little bit. But then we decided to switch back to burgers at the stadiums just because it was much easier for us to assemble operationally. But yeah, I mean it's been doing really well. People that do order it, they're definitely enjoying it and coming back to get it again. But I don't know, it's something new. Like I know it's typically a New York thing, right, from a bodega.
Yeah.
And it's only like catching ground right now. So I noticed there's restaurants popping up in LA and I think even in Austin that are doing chopped cheeses. So I think
good.
Eventually
it'll
get here.
And what's it like being at Levi Stadium, man?
Oh man, that is just a whole nother beast.
Yeah. And how'd that happen? Did you apply? Like, did they put out a list for vendors? How'd that get in there?
Yeah. So
how'd you guys get in there?
Levi's actually run by a master concessionaire, and
right.
Prior to Levi, we were actually invited to be at SAP Center, and I think one of the individuals that was at SAP ended up transferring over to Levi, and so when they were deciding on putting a new lineup in there, we got an email and said, "Hey, are you guys interested in coming into Levi Stadium?" And I said, "Yeah." This was the 2019-2020 season. So we started off with two locations there. We had one on the upper concourse and then one in the club, in the United Club.
Okay.
And I don't know, it was a whole like learning curve for us. Like we had never done anything like that.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened, and we took a year off, and then one of the things that they were going to do in the 2020 season was offer unlimited food in the clubs. And so when we came back last year, it was like, we're still going to do the unlimited food. Are you guys still willing to do this? And I said, yeah, let's just see what it's like. And it's amazing how much food we go through there. I mean, I think we go through like 550 pounds of tenders every game for one club, and we're in two different clubs.
Whoa.
We're serving roughly 1,000 burgers. I want to say like 600-700 pounds of French fries.
Not to mention the Niners are doing very well.
Yeah.
So the stadium's packed.
The stadium's packed, and there's a playoff game this weekend.
Yep.
So we're definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the energy is really good. We love being there.
What's it like just having a mass of people just show up to the counter and you got to put everything that out,
Yeah.
I think that's probably was a different experience, right?
It is definitely a different experience. And we've just had to adapt, right? In the beginning, It was like, shoot, we're running out of food. How do we keep up here? And I think like every game we try and dial it in a little bit more. We're like, what can we do to make this easier for us, right? Last year, because of staffing issues and whatnot, it was a stretch, and we had a really, really small team, and we were still doing like the same volume that we're doing this year, probably operating with like 75% of the staff. But yeah, I mean, this year we're taking a much more like focused approach, and we're trying to specialize stations. So it's like you're literally just doing this one thing the entire game. That way you're not like stressing out about having to do 2 or 3 different things, which we did last year. Yeah. And that was a little bit too hectic for us last year.
Yeah. And then you're serving pretty limited at the stadium, right?
So all we have is a cheeseburger, just like with lettuce, tomato. And we do a pickle or a condiment bar on the side, so people can just put their own condiments on. That's part of streamlining the process too. Yeah. Is, we get a lot of people like, oh, I don't want this or I don't want that. Yeah. And when we're saucing the burgers and putting the pickles and stuff on, people are just like, I don't want this. And so it would kind of disrupt the service.
Customize every single one when you got to do 100 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So we, we've made those adjustments so that we can streamline the process a little bit better. And really over there, it's about customer experience, right? Like you don't want to run out of food. You don't want the customer to be waiting too long. And so everything that we do there is really just to figure out like how are we going to improve the customer experience overall.
Yeah, that's awesome because it is tough. They're leaving their seat to get some food, and then they want to go right back to the game. So
yeah, definitely.
They're trying to get it in and then enjoy and put out a good product and get it to them quickly.
Yeah.
It is a tough task, but that's awesome.
Yeah, I would say that now that we've been doing it for 2 years, we've got it honed in.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like minor tweaks here and there that we would have to make, but yeah, we're pretty close to, I guess, mastering the process of just like putting out a bunch of food.
And then, you've got my other favorite is, and my brother will test this too, is the fried chicken sandwiches.
Yeah.
You were definitely ahead of the curve as far as when fried chicken sandwiches kind of were getting crazy and all the fast food changes.
Yeah.
Fast food chains picked it up and started putting them out. You already had that going before.
Yeah.
What was that process like? And, how did that, how did you come up with what you wanted? Did you have some experience from traveling for those? And what made you put that on so early?
In all honesty, I don't know. When I was a kid, I loved ordering Burger King's fried chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just one day I was like, let's just put a fried chicken sandwich on the menu. Mm-hmm. And we had worked on it for a couple months. I actually wasn't really involved in the process. I gave one of my cooks instructions on what we wanted in that sandwich, and he basically worked on it for a couple months and dialed it in. But kind of going back to like me eating chicken sandwiches, like I really like McDonald's spicy chicken sandwich too. Yeah. So I think that's where we were like, okay, let's do a spicy chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
So yeah, my cooks, they just kind of started working on it. I was like, this thing needs to be spicy. It needs to kind of stay in line with our philosophy of like making, a lot of these sauces in-house. So we did a house-made ranch on that. We made all the pickles, and then I was thinking, well, we have a lot of Asian inspiration in our menu, so instead of doing like a traditional slaw, let's do a kimchi slaw.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how the sandwich was born.
Yeah, it's super good, man.
Thanks.
Super good. And then, not to get on a sore subject, but I think we should talk about it. We're sitting here in Santa Clara at your Santa Clara location. You recently announced that you were closing this location. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so, the pandemic really threw us a curveball.
Yeah.
When the pandemic first started, I had to make a lot of business decisions that, really were ultimately about survival, right? So we closed our San Pedro location.
I remember that.
And we lost SAP and Levi Stadium's income sources for like a year, a little bit over a year. And what we noticed is that as the pandemic started dying down at this location in particular, the consumer dining patterns have shifted. I was looking at the numbers, for November and December of last year, and I would say about 80% of our orders are takeout and delivery now, whereas like pre-pandemic, it was maybe 15%. And so we're paying all this overhead on a dining room, and it just, like, I don't see the justification in doing that. And so our lease actually comes to an end this month, and I did a lot of strategic planning last year, and I was like, well, what are we going to do to continue this restaurant? And so we made the decision to close this because it was losing money every month. And unfortunately, like, we didn't get a restaurant revitalization fund grant. We did get the PPP loans, which helped us, but I think that grant would have like helped maybe carry us through this year and, or this past year and potentially part of this year. But we didn't get one. So I had to make the decision of what we had to do with this location. And when I was running my numbers, I was like, the amount of revenue that we would have to increase our sales by just to make it work out, because a lot of these delivery companies are taking such, a huge chunk of our sales.
Terrible.
like we would have to drastically increase the sales here, and I just didn't see how that was going to be physically possible. So we're going to be relocating it to a ghost kitchen in San Jose. It's a pretty central one. I think some people may have heard of it. It's owned by Cloud Kitchens.
Okay.
It's right off of Coleman and the 880. So there's pretty good, access to all the different freeways. And we're going to focus on takeout and delivery and catering as well, because we do a lot of catering, corporate catering, where people just order burgers for their teams.
Okay. Sounds good.
And then I haven't announced this yet, but we are actually going to be opening up at State Street Market in Los Altos.
Ooh.
So
you heard it here, folks.
So that should be actually happening sometime in March, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think they will be announcing that shortly. So we're just waiting on their announcement before we we tell everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good spot. Before we get into your new stuff, I felt like the San Pedro didn't handle the pandemic very well. My friend Christine owns Treatbot.
Yeah.
Yeah, she owned Treatbot inside there, and she felt like it was, just closing all of a sudden, instead of going to a, some sort of to-go model.
Yeah.
Kind of didn't help you guys out,
Yeah, I know Christine actually really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree with her, and that's one of the things that we were considering when we decided to leave.
Yeah.
But I get it from their perspective too. I mean, the overhead to run that place is not cheap by any means, and I think there was just a lot of consideration around that. Like, is takeout going to be sufficient enough, to allow these guys to make money, and then we're going to have to charge them full rent or whatever for this, right?
Yeah.
And I think there was also a lot of consideration at that time around like the safety of, how do you regulate like people that are coming in and out of the market?
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of thinking, like, now in hindsight, like, I know the layout of that place. It's like, well, everyone doesn't have to come in. You guys have all your kitchens and all your stuff inside. There's not that much seating in there anyway. I mean, there's a lot, but they have those nice outdoor areas where people can come in to, you guys, my thinking was they could have just set up an outdoor station.
Yeah.
Where you'd be like, hey, I'm ordering from Konjoe, I'm ordering from Treatbot, I'm ordering from whatever, Chinese, sushi, whatever was in there, right? I think there was a barbecue and sandwich place, I remember, at that time. So, and then just make it that way. But that's just my, 2 cents about that whole situation.
Yeah. I mean, I like looking back on it, like it's something that I had wished, and I actually had pleaded with them before we made the decision to move out. Like I said, can we open for at least takeout? Because, I want to get this operation back up and running. And their answer at that time was no, because we're still trying to figure this out. I don't even know if malls were open at that time. And I think that's what they were.
That's what they were basing it on.
Yeah, because it was more like a mall atmosphere.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I have no ill feelings towards them. Like I was there about a month ago, and I mean it was bustling again. And I was happy to see that. Yeah, I was happy to see that everything was back to normal.
I know, but I look at your space and I'm like, man. No Konjoe Burger.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of right in the center of everything. And like, we have a ton of friends that we used to eat there. And so it's just when it's not there, it's just a bummer.
Yeah.
But moving on to bigger and better things. State Street is blowing up. If you didn't know, I interviewed Lars Smith of State of Mind Public House and Pizzeria. So he's right down the street from that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a you got a large crowd coming in for that, and that would be really cool. I think they've been trying to. I think they've been working on finding niche restaurants in that new center. I know there's a couple of flipped over already, so I think that would be really, really awesome for you.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it. I mean, one of the things that I realized too is, I think the consumer dining preferences have shifted, because I think people are looking for an experience now when they go out to dine, and I think it is going to get a lot harder for like smaller operators like myself to have a full blown restaurant if we're just doing quick service, right?
Yeah.
And being in an environment like that, it's more of a catered experience because there's a bar, there's multiple restaurants, it's family friendly. It's just a place where people can go and hang out,
Gather. Yep.
And so we're not having to do that ourselves, which I think will be really beneficial for us.
And speaking of local stuff, I always ask everyone, is there any local businesses you'd like to let everybody know about or give a shout out to?
Let me think about this. My favorite Japanese restaurant in San Jose is Kaita in Japantown. I don't know if you've ever been there.
Kaita.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I
right.
haven't.
It's right next to Kumako Ramen.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, so it's to the right of it. I really like it because it's really small. It kind of reminds me of Japan. It's family owned. A lot of the dishes are, I don't know. It just kind of reminds me of my mom's cooking. So I think that's why I gravitate towards that place. Like we try and frequent that restaurant maybe monthly, if not more.
Yeah, and we can always get some more off air and put them in the show notes. But also, I just kind of want to talk to you, like during the pandemic. I know you did a lot of family cooking too, right?
Yeah.
So how was that? What was that like, cooking at home all of a sudden, full time kind of?
It was different. And I think, kind of going off of that, the pandemic did shift my mentality about being home more, right?
Yeah.
In the beginning of the pandemic, I was in this restaurant a lot, and I was working a lot, and I was here with the team, but it's, my wife ended up getting pregnant, and we ended up having our second child during the pandemic. So I wanted to be there more for my kids, and I've definitely taken, I guess, a shift in how I want to handle that. And so I've been cooking a lot more at home in general, but I do think the pandemic kind of inspired that, right?
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it was crazy. Like I remember those 2 weeks where everything just shut down, and it was like, what do we do? Well, let's just cook, right? Yeah. And so we were eating different things. I was getting grocery deliveries from whatever vendors that I was supporting at the time, because I think a lot of our vendors were doing home deliveries, right?
I even picked up the Cream Company meat box.
Yeah, from here. Yeah. So we were just,
that was great.
I was ordering different things and just experimenting at home. Yeah. Shout out to those guys. They've actually been our meat provider for, I don't know, I want to say like 5 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Like, shout out to Creamco. They've been your meat vendor. Tell us about them, and if there's any other vendors you want to tell us about too, because a lot of people want to know where their meat comes from. Yeah,
so we've been using Creamco for, I want to say 5 years now, and I actually know the founder of the company. I met him through a farm tour that I did. He was actually working for Mindful Meats, which is the very first meat company that we started using back in the day when we first opened up, and he was, I don't know if he was a founder of that company too, or if he was just working with them, but he branched off and opened up his own meat company. He had reached out to me and he was like, hey, I have a meat company. Can I bring you some samples? He brought me the samples, and I was like, man, this meat is amazing. But he's built the company on the principles of, just trying to source the best meat possible. They are a never ever company, and if you're not in the food industry, never ever means like no antibiotics, like no growth hormones or anything like that. So those are the basic principles of the business, and we've been working with them since. And I would say that their product is just much better than most other meat companies, and there's a lot of transparency too in what they're serving. So that's great. Yeah, that's great. But yeah, going back to the pandemic question, I mean, we were cooking whatever. Like I was ordering things that maybe I had never worked with before, or things that I've, wanted to cook and haven't been able to cook in a really long time. And we ate really well. Yeah. Would you end up like picking up like
recipe wise?
I think that's when I started working on the rib recipe. Was
okay.
in that time.
Yeah.
Because I remember I got a box of meat from them. I think ribs were in the box. I'm like, what am I going to do with these ribs?
Yeah.
Let me just try and start working on a recipe. And then I kind of got addicted to it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it again and try and make it better.
Yeah. Are there, and you don't have to tell us now, but like this will be out in a few months anyway with the State Street. Are there things on the menu different for State Street that you're going to pull out? Or
No.
you're going to start out with some of the gold standard stuff?
I think what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the gold standard stuff. We'll definitely rotate specials in and out. And I think our menu is just going to evolve over time, and it's really going to be dependent upon the customer base for one.
Yeah.
Two, like what can we realistically do in that kitchen? I think over the years I've come to realize like sometimes I get ahead of myself and I'm like, maybe we're doing a little bit too much, but you know, I want to push the team and see if they're able to execute on that. So the menu's still TBD. We will definitely have a lot of our mainstays.
Yeah.
We are potentially working on, for the ghost kitchen at least, like a test kitchen concept. That'll only be available for pickup and delivery.
And that's cool. You could probably test items out of there, right? It'll be like, oh, here's a new item for the day. And if it like flies off the shelf, right?
So the nice thing about there is like a lot of the leases that we do sign, there's a clause in the lease on what we can serve, right? So if we're a burger place, we're kind of limited to that.
Oh, okay.
But with the, the ghost kitchen, there's not going to be a lot of restriction around that. And there's been a lot of things in my head that I kind of want to just test out.
Yeah.
We were able to do it in the pandemic. Like we did poke bowls for a little bit. I still get inquiries to this day, like, when are you guys bringing the poke bowls back?
Yeah, I mean, that's in your background, man.
Yeah.
I mean.
So, we're just going to test things out, see what sticks and what doesn't. And it'll just be a way for us to cook for people in ways that we haven't done in the past. Yeah,
and I think, you can attest to this, but like people like that request an item, you're like, cool, but you don't know what it takes for me to get that on the menu. Like I can do it for one day as a special, but to have it as a standing menu, it's an entire process for an entire area of the restaurant or kitchen.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think any restaurant operator that you speak with will tell you that they do not want to change the menu. Like they want to make as little changes as possible, because it is a massive feat to add new items to the menu. You got to, explain it to, if you have a serving staff, you got to explain it to them. The kitchen has to know how to prep it. Like you got to make the recipes, you got to scale the recipes. You got to price out and make sure that it's priced correctly so that you're not losing money on the item. And there's always this uncertainty, like, is this product going to move, or are people just not going to order it, right? Yeah. And if it ends up not being ordered, then what do you do with all that food? Do you run a special, or, is it just family meal with it? Can't really family meal something if you're using really expensive ingredients. So, yeah. It's
going to be an exciting staff meal, dude.
Yeah, it would be a really exciting staff meal. And, like, on occasion, it's fine, but it's not something that you can do every day. Yeah. Restaurant margins are really slim, so can't be serving, like, I don't know, ribeyes to your staff every single day, right?
Yeah. No. So before I close it out, I always have a few other questions, but is there a recipe or dish that you'd want everybody to try? I know you have a vast background, from coming from where you were in Guam and being all over the country, all over the world. What do you think is something that you're like, hey, you know what? This is something I think you should try if you've never had it, or a recipe you should try and make?
I would say more so than anything else, I think people need to be a little bit more open to cooking in general. Like, I don't think there's a specific recipe that people should try. I just noticed that, like, my generation, a lot of our friends don't really cook as much as, like, say my parents did or their parents did. Yeah. I mean, I'm guilty of this too, which is why I'm trying a lot harder to make more home cooked meals for my family. And I get it, like, people are busy, but I do think that there's a lot of, I guess, nervous energy around, like, that first time I'm going to cook something for myself in the kitchen. It's like, if you just try it, it'll only get better from there, even if it's horrible the first time. And I think, some people cook and maybe it's horrible that first time and they're like, I'm never cooking ever again.
Yeah, but unless it's baking, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't.
You don't
have to.
If you put a little too much salt, okay, it's a little more than usual. But like baking, you got to be pretty precise, and it leaves little for any mistakes. But like I've helped some friends, especially over the pandemic. We were doing like FaceTime cooking.
Yeah,
and like my buddy Tim, shout out to Tim, big supporter of the podcast. But like, he'd be like, hey, I don't know how to make this. Like, I don't know where to start. Yeah. And then I would just be like, all right, cool. I'm going to text you all the ingredients you need. These are what you need. Get those, and then we'll put it all together in one night and kind of do it over. And now he's long distance, so like we've put together a couple different things lately. Yeah. And sometimes it's replicating even a dish from a restaurant. Yeah, definitely. And if you get lucky enough, and guys like us, we can kind of break it down or watch them make it, and it kind of sticks in our head and go, I think I can make that at home now. Yeah. And then go to the store, put it all together, test it a couple of times, and go, I think I got it. Yeah. And then it's exciting to give that to someone else, though, and let them make it. And now they have that with them forever.
Well, it's been interesting, too, because I've seen some friends and family members, like, they never cooked before. And just watching their progression, it's like, now I go to their house, I'm like, okay, I'm really looking forward to this meal. Whereas, like, maybe in the beginning I was like, it's kind of iffy, like I'm going to bring something. And now it's just like, I don't want to bring anything. Like, you guys are doing a much better job, and much better than I could potentially do too.
Super cool.
So it's just nice to see people's growth. And I think that's just something that I've learned even with the restaurants. Like, we've had so many people come in and it's like, I don't know how to cook at all. They start off as a cashier and then they want to get their hands wet in the kitchen. So we let them prep a little bit, and the next thing I know, it's like they're, frying French fries, and then they're on the grill, like cooking burgers, and they're like running a shift all by themselves. It's just, it's really cool to see that growth.
But and we are seeing like a lot of, social media chefs too, but it's like, you're able to see something being made in a minute. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not how long it takes, but like, at least you can see the process. Yeah. And go, okay. But, when you actually do it, it's going to take you an hour. Maybe it takes 3. Maybe if you're smoking a brisket, that's an all-day thing,
Yeah, and I think it helps you to develop a bigger appreciation for restaurants in general, because you're like, it does take a lot to make a dish. It's not just like I buy a bunch of things at the grocery store and I go home and it's done in 5 minutes. Like, that's not the case. Not at all. Ever.
Yep. And then something I also ask is a favorite gear, favorite type gear or tools. What's your favorite to use on a daily basis, either in the kitchen or just with you all the time?
Thermometer.
Yeah,
I always used to cook without a thermometer, and I don't know why. It was just like, if you use one, you can't cook. Yeah, like that was like my mentality when I was younger.
That's like the old chef way.
Yeah, like if you're gonna cook a steak and you want it medium, like you got to touch it and feel how firm it is to know
do the hand trick.
Yeah, the hand trick. Yeah, definitely. But I don't know. In the pandemic, I started using a thermometer, and I was like, I can get this right every single time the way I want it to be. Right. Yeah. And I was like, every time I make a prime rib, I use a thermometer. So why wouldn't I do it with like a steak or like a pork chop or whatever? Yeah.
Do you use like a digital thermal pen or?
Yeah. I mean, I buy a cheap one off of Amazon and use that, because I noticed they tend to break really easily. So I'm not looking for any specific brand or anything like that.
Okay. Sometimes I get specific because some people are like, oh, what is it? I want to know which brand, which one did you get? But, if it's just any of them, there's a lot of good ones out there.
I don't even know the brand that we have. I know it's Red.
Okay. But so you're using like a thermal pen is what they call it for short, and it's digital. Very nice. That works very well. Before I close it out, I'm going to give you the floor. You can give advice. You can give promotions. Obviously, you mentioned State Street, but anything you want to promote, the floor is yours, man. Whatever you want to tell us.
Let me think about this. I would say if you're getting into the restaurant industry, I think 3 years ago I would have told you don't do it. Like, just steer clear from it. But if it's something that you're really passionate about, I would say just go for it. and try it out. It's going to be a grind. But at the end of the day, you should really be doing things that you want to do. And if it ends up failing, then it ends up failing. And at least you can say that you tried. And there's not going to be that question in your mind that, like, what if I had done this, right? I think in the pandemic, I had a lot of instances where I was just like, I'm completely over this. I don't want to do this anymore. But now I have a kind of like a newfound respect for the business, and I don't know, newfound appreciation for it. And so I would just say, go for it if it's something that you want to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There it is, folks. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you, Joey. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
Take
thanks
care,
for having
everybody.
me.
We're out. All right. And as a quick reminder, the restaurants and gear talked about on each episode can be found on my website, foodoriginspodcast.com. I appreciate your support, and thanks for listening.